Hello and welcome back to Schamberger Labs. I am still Rob Schamberger, and this week while working on my, I hope masterpiece painting of Charlotte Flair, I would talk with you a bit about my own journey as an artist. I get a lot of young artists, a lot of just people interested that ask me about this. I thought it'd be fun to share it with you this week. So where I feel it really started for me was when I was like 7 or 8 and I got my first comic book. It was an issue of The Incredible Hulk where he was fighting the Absorbing Man on Hoover Dam. He was the Gray Hulk at the time. And I just knew in that moment I wanted to be an artist that could make something like this. Like, this was it for me. The light bulb went off. There was nothing else really that I wanted other than maybe being a writer as well. Just someone who got to create these kind of things and give other people the kind of joy that it gave me, hopefully. And I would redraw like every comic I got. Sometimes like the whole comic I would redraw myself. Then I started making my own characters, started making my own comics with them. Probably, let's see, I was in 6th grade when I wrote and drew my whole first comic book, and then throughout junior high into high school I was making comics. In fact, like early in high school, I remember once in geometry class, I was drawing one of my characters, called him Mystery Man. He was like a knockoff of Batman and Moon Knight, and Azrael too. But anyway, I was, doodling that in the borders of my notebook, and my teacher snatched it off my desk and held it up and said, "Who here thinks drawing stuff like this is going to get Rob further than paying attention here in geometry class?" And the whole class raised their hands, which was odd for an outcast like me that, they just didn't care for the teacher either. Anyway, fast forward to a few years ago, I went and spoke at my high school for a career day, talking about becoming a professional artist. And I was set up in the classroom next to where that teacher was still. And on my way out, we locked eyes, and I got to tell him that it did take me further. So that was cool. But anyway, in high school, especially like junior and senior year, I really focused just on art. Like, I would do whatever was required of me to graduate, but definitely by senior year, other than like 2 classes, all of my classes were art. Whether it was painting, I think they called it drawing instead of illustration, pottery, printmaking. I was in there. It was all the same hallway. I was a teacher's assistant for 2 different teachers. Essentially doing an independent study thing. And the teachers luckily really believed in me. We've stayed in touch ever since. And even for like my senior year in high school, my senior project for each of those classes was a comic book that I used the different techniques and things that we were covering in those classes, 4 different pages within the comic, and I actually self-published it when I was 17. So that was when my professional career started, which will be 25 years here in about a month or 2, which is wild. But I also went in on the business side of it. Like, I was distributing the book around town out of the trunk of my car, like MC Hammer style, and trying to make a go of that. It wasn't a huge success. I did pretty good, but it was definitely like, this is what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And But then, like college wasn't an option for me. I had to jump right into working, and I felt like I wanted to get jobs where I could still learn all of the ancillary skills needed to be a professional artist, but that I would also be miserable at those jobs so that I didn't get comfortable. Um, Maybe the best advice I can give to a young artist, and your parents are going to flip out when they hear this, because it's not the advice I was given either, but um, don't have a backup plan. Don't have a plan B. If you have that, that all of a sudden becomes your reality. And if you jump right in and do everything that it takes to make your dream come true, it's more likely to come true. Um, I took a much longer and harder path. But I took jobs like banking and insurance and customer service, a lot of those behind the scenes skills that pay off on the business side, especially like all that corporate stuff working with WWE now. I know how to speak corporate. I know how to say the things they want to hear to communicate what I'm trying to do to, the business people there. Things like that really helped out quite a bit. The politicking stuff, like as much as I hate that, it is a skill that comes in handy at times. But for a few years after graduating high school, maybe up to like 5 years, I fell out of making art. I was focusing on being a writer instead. A lot of that came down to just financial realities. Get purchasing the supplies needed to do it at a professional level. I just didn't have that income, and I felt like I didn't have the time. But then around when I was I would say about 25 or so, maybe a little bit before, maybe 23, I started getting back into making art, and I discovered, to my horror, that I had to relearn all of these skills. I had to pretty much start from scratch. Like, I knew the principles of everything. I knew what was needed, but I had lost all of the muscle memory of it. And that's an important thing too, is that as artists, as creators, we're building a body of work, and it's real easy to get lost in like one specific thing that you're making, trying to make it perfect, trying to have the mindset that like this is going to be your To Kill a Mockingbird or your I want to say Mona Lisa, but even Da Vinci had a body of work, right? But like people that are thinking like this is the thing that I'm going to be remembered for and known for forever. And I can tell you, as someone who's had a lot of work that's been seen by a lot of people, some of them tens of millions, that is just not true. The people see it and they forget it almost immediately. Very few of us get to do something like To Kill a Mockingbird, which is, one perfect piece of art out of the gate. Instead, we're making a body of work. And the way to go into that is to look at every piece that you're making right now is informed by everything that you made before, everything that went right, everything that went wrong, everything that happened accidentally that could be replicated in a way to get a more desired result. All of those things come into each piece that you're making. I used to try to give that answer when people would ask me how long does a painting take. The joke I've heard around this is attributed to Picasso. It could be anyone. This is just the version I heard. that a woman was walking through a park and she sees Picasso sitting on a bench sketching. And she says, "Oh my gosh, you're the world famous artist Pablo Picasso. Can you do my portrait?" And he says, "Sure." And he looks at her for a minute or two, makes a few gestures, hands her a perfect portrait. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Thank you." And he says, "That'll be $500. And she's like, "What?" Like, you looked at me for a little bit, made a few lines, and that was it. Like, it only took you a few minutes. And he says, "No, it took me my whole life." And that's the same with the artistic journey. Whatever you're doing right now is important because it is the culmination of everything that you've done up to this point. And that only lasts until the next thing that you make, which will then be the next culmination, the next thing that you're learning from, the next time that you're making bold experiments, the next time that you're trying to push yourself even further. That's definitely been true for me. And it's a great way to continue to grow as an artist. Not everyone gets to have like a perfect, fully defined style right out of the gate. And even people that do, like there's those crazy artists like Dustin Nguyen, who I think he started when he was like 18 or 19 years old. Even he has evolved quite a bit as an artist since then. You don't want to like get stuck in like one specific way of making art. You want to continue to grow and experiment. And even when I was trying hard to be a comic book artist through the rest of my 20s and into my early 30s, I was still making other kinds of art on the side, especially paintings, and trying to really experiment there because everything that I learned with a different medium or a different approach, I could bring back to what I considered my core style to continue to grow. You see that with a lot of other artists like Bill Sienkiewicz or David Mack or Jim Mahfood. They all are constantly experimenting and bringing things back to what they're doing. It's funny, you can always tell when an artist discovers Ralph Steadman too. He had such a unique approach that it's you can see the exact moment when an artist discovers his work. You can see a period of that with mine as well. But when I was trying to make comics, and I was putting out like a self-published graphic novel a year, mostly web comics, but I would do like handmade mini comics that I would distribute around town still. It really dawned on me in my early 30s that it was never going to happen for me with comic books. I had to be really brutally honest with myself that I did not have the skills that it took. The analogy that I use often for that to describe to people, especially like when they see where my career is at the moment, they're like, "Wow, like those companies didn't know what they were missing out on." Like, no, they knew exactly what they were. Like, I didn't have what it took. And that the analogy is that not everyone can be a plumber, right? Like, you could hand me all the materials to put in new pipes or to fix my sink, and I ain't gonna be able to pull it off. I don't have the brain for it, right? And it was the same thing with comics. I think that I was an electrician trying to be a plumber, and so I was like really in a dark place for a while. Katie was pretty scared for me at the time because I mean I was just in a foul mood because like I felt like my life's path had just kind of ended, didn't go anywhere, didn't succeed. But I had all those paintings around, and even before I had made the decision to step away from comics, Katie had a contact that ran a gallery, and her artist had flaked out at the last minute, which happens all the time. And Katie was like, "Oh, my boyfriend," we were still dating at the time, weren't married yet. She was like, "My boyfriend has all these paintings sitting around. Would you like to do those?" And we did, and that was my first solo gallery show, and it was a monster success, and like really changed things. Like other gallerists came and like booked me for their shows. I sold pieces. Well, at the time, it was a monster success. But I still had to have a day job to pay for my art career. And let's, take a step back there. I was holding down these jobs that were essentially paying for my art career, like full-time jobs, 40 hours a week. And then I would come home and draw and then later paint for 4 to 5 hours a night on weeknights and 8 to 10 hours a day on the weekends. Because I knew even if the money wasn't coming in, I still needed to be putting in full-time effort on my art to continue to grow, to continue to build that body of work. I needed to do a lot of bad art so that I could hopefully someday do something that was pretty good, that was of professional grade. Maybe we'll get there someday. But I had to continue to treat it like a full-time career so that I could keep up, right? Like you can't just wait for someone to come knocking. You have to put in the work. There was a saying back in the days of vaudeville that you needed somewhere to go be lousy so that you could do something good someday. That was what vaudeville was for. A lot of acts would go out on that circuit and just practice and go be lousy for a while. And that was me with my self-published comics and my web comics. Like I was out there being lousy so that I could develop as an artist, especially without college. I was having to like buy every tutorial book, join different organizations so that I could meet other artists and watch them work and learn from them. All of those kinds of things to soak it in while I still was maintaining a day job that was paying for all that. And so after I stepped away from making comics, I was doing fairly okay with the gallery scene. Like I was more financially successful there than I ever was in comics, but it wasn't near enough to like cover my expenses. And ultimately that's how I still view being a success as an artist, as a creative person, is making enough to cover my expenses. That just means I get to continue to do it full time, right? So I wasn't quite there yet. I was halfway there, maybe over halfway on good months. But what I realized was that I was not standing out from everyone else that was doing work in a similar vein, whether it's subject matter or style. And so all of that business experience I had built up out in the financial and corporate world, and also a book on marketing I had just read because I was really into that show Mad Men at the time. I came across a marketing slogan, which is for your business, your brand, your whatever to stand out, you need one of three things, and that's to be the first at something, to be completely different, or to be the best. And so I brought that back to my art because at the end of the day, as artists, we are small business owners. We're selling artistic goods and services to clients, to customers, and that's how we generate our living. And so why shouldn't an artist look at it that way as well? Unless you're like working full time somewhere as a staff artist, you're essentially like either a contractor or a retailer. And I took that mindset and looked at, well, what can I do to stand out? What can I do for my art to be different from what's out there? And I was watching Monday Night Raw, and it was like, oh, no one's doing fine art seriously of professional wrestling. And I was like, oh my gosh, no one else is doing this. I need to jump on this so that I can stand out, so that I can put my foot in that door. And so I put together a project on Kickstarter, and this was in the early days of Kickstarter, and really honestly in the early days of social media. And like I think Twitter still only had 140 characters, and I don't know if like quote tweeting existed. Facebook wasn't terrible yet. So I put out a call on there, and I was able to raise $20,000 in a month. And at the time, it was one of the most successful campaigns on Kickstarter, and especially in the art category, who way surpassed since then. But it was early days, and that allowed me to quit the day job and to try to make a fresh start out there. And I knew that online was a very powerful tool for this, but also at the end of the day, I was making physical paintings. I needed to get them out there for people to see in person. And so I booked every type of wrestling show, convention, whatever type of event that I could, to either show off the art or sell prints and original paintings. And I that paid off. And I booked these things across the country, but over those shows, I made contacts with Jim Ross and Jerry Briscoe and Ben Brown with WWE, and that eventually led to me falling under the WWE umbrella, having people like them speaking up for me, and then being able to turn it into what this became. But even then, I felt like that was just my foot in the door. And ever since then, and this is all something that I've just put on myself, but that I needed to continue to prove to be worth being inside that door, to not get kicked out. I needed to seize every opportunity, because at the end of the day, WWE only gave me a platform and opportunity, and all the rest was on me. Like when we first started talking, it was very close-ended. Like they were going to bring me out for WrestleMania 30 Access, out in the hallway outside of Access to paint live and try to sell some of the original paintings. And it was there that we started talking about prints. And even that took over a year for us to start selling prints on WWE Shop. We started selling some originals on WWE Auction, but even that took a year or two to start doing the sign prints on auction. And, all that time, like building relationships within the company as well as with all of WWE's fans to try to show that, there is support for the kind of art that I'm making within the professional wrestling sphere. Because, like, going back to the first best or different, no one was doing fine art within professional wrestling as a focus. And so I got to step in and be first. We'll leave it up to a lot of other people's opinions, and they've got them on whether I'm best or not. I don't think I am. I think there's other artists out there, but on the business side, I think I still do that part really good. And as far as being completely different, it was different just by nature of being first. And then within the art world, it was completely different from what else was out there. I don't know that the art world has really embraced me, but that's okay. Through therapy, hey, take a drink. I mentioned therapy. Through therapy, I've really zeroed in on where I need validation from, and it doesn't have to be externally. And it doesn't have, especially doesn't need to be from strangers. And most of it comes from inside of me. And so, like, getting the approval of other artists is nice, but most artists don't buy art. And so when I started focusing on making art that consumers wanted to buy, instead of trying to make art that other artists validated, that's when I started making money. So for a lot of young artists or struggling artists out there, keep that in mind too. And then the follow-up part is the business side of it. Treating what you do as a business is how you're going to make a lifetime career out of this. Like I just said, I think that, like, on a technical level, there are a lot of other artists out there that are significantly better than me, just within the wrestling sphere. Outside of wrestling, I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of other artists that I personally feel like are better craftsmen than I am. But I figured out a way to do the business side right, and don't lose sight of that. So bringing all that together and where I'm at now, sure, like, I don't feel comfortable at all. Right, like some there could be an executive change or something at WWE, and all of a sudden they don't feel I'm the right fit anymore, which is their right. And so I need to continue to make the most of what I have right now and the time that I have, and continue to grow as an artist as well. Continue to examine other avenues for my art, other ways that I can utilize the business skills I have, like the distribution and fulfillment of prints that I do for other artists like Jill Thompson, Daniel Miares, and Mike Oming. All of those kinds of things on the side as well, right? Because, like, I don't know that I'm going to be with WWE forever. I don't know that I get a lifetime career out of it. And, but also, like, if if a chapter ends with them, I have the other thing that I did from the beginning that will eventually pay off, which is that I own all of my work. I did not sell it to WWE on like a work for hire basis. That was the original offer that was presented to me, and I declined it. I said, let's examine other outlets for this. And because of that, like, you know, I can sell a print of a painting I made back in 2013 and still make some money off of it and continue to earn that way. You know, we don't get as self-employed professional artists a retirement. So we have to make our own, and owning your own work is a huge part of that. It leads to what's called a passive revenue stream, where you're getting paid for work that you've already done, that you don't need to do new additional work for. So maybe somewhere far down the line, where maybe I'm not working with WWE anymore, but they don't want me out there with that library, they could, you know, make a deal with me on that as well. And then whatever else that I'm working on the side or in between, just continuing to push myself to continue to grow as an artist, as a business owner, as a husband, a friend, and just as a human being. Continuing not just a journey as an artist, but also as a human being. And thank you for being on this journey with me up to now and to wherever it goes for us from here. And I'm so appreciative of you. I make my living from sales, so every like individual piece sold, it allows me to keep the lights on, and I thank you for that. I love you for that, and yeah, thanks. So if you want to see these videos a week early, we're going to jump right into plugs. I don't know how to wrap things up too well. If you want to see these videos a week early, you can go to robschamberger.substack.com. Paid tier members get a week's early access. You also get all kinds of other good stuff there as well. Like each week, I'm giving away a painting to an original painting. That's a heck of a deal. To see the art, to be able to purchase it, you can go to schambergerlabs.com. On social media, at Rob Schamberger. Make sure you do a Roman Reigns and smash that like and subscribe button. I guess you're supposed to do that. And I will see you next week. Thank you. I love you. Bye.